you fear. 9 Stoic lessons that will make you fearless. Most people live their entire lives controlled by fear. Fear of rejection, fear of failure, fear of embarrassment, fear of losing money, fear of what other people think. And without even realizing it, fear quietly becomes the invisible prison that limits their life. It decides what they say. It decides what they try. It decides how big they dream. But more than 2,000 years ago, a group of philosophers discovered something powerful. They discovered that fear is not something that happens to you. Fear is something that happens inside you. And if you learn to control your mind, you become impossible to control. One of the greatest Stoic philosophers, Marcus Aurelius, once wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." That single idea is the foundation of fearlessness. The Stoics believed that the reason most people suffer is because they try to control things that were never under their control in the first place. But the moment you understand this philosophy, something incredible happens. You stop worrying. You stop begging for approval. You stop fearing rejection. You become calm in chaos. Danger no longer scares you. Criticism no longer controls you. Failure no longer stops you. This is the power of Stoicism. And in this video, we will explore 9 powerful Stoic lessons that will help you become mentally unbreakable and fearless in the modern world. But be warned, some of these lessons are uncomfortable, because the truth often is accept that everything can be taken from you. One of the most powerful Stoic practices is something called negative visualization. This idea was taught by the Stoic philosopher Seneca. Instead of constantly hoping everything will go perfectly, Stoics imagine the opposite. They imagine losing things. The job, their money, their reputation, even the people they love. At first, this might sound dark. Why would anyone imagine losing everything? Because the Stoics understood something most people don't. Fear comes from attachment. The more you cling to things, the more terrified you become of losing them. Imagine someone who believes they must never lose their job. Every small mistake becomes terrifying. Every criticism feels like a threat. Every change becomes stressful. But now imagine someone who has already accepted the possibility of losing it. Suddenly something changes. They stop living in fear. They become calm, because the worst outcome has already been faced in their mind. And once you mentally accept loss, it loses its power over you. Even Epictetus taught this lesson. He said, "Never say about anything, 'I have lost it,' say instead, 'I have returned it.' Your possessions were never permanently yours. They were temporarily given. Your house, your money, your success, even your youth. When you deeply understand this, you become fearless. Because nothing can truly be taken from you. Only returned. Stop trying to control what you can't control. This is the most famous Stoic principle, the dichotomy of control. The Stoics believed that life becomes simple when you divide everything into 2 categories. Things you can control, and things you cannot control. What can you control? Your thoughts, your actions, your decisions, your attitude. What can't you control? Other people, their opinions, their emotions, their behavior, the past, the future. Yet most people spend their entire lives obsessed with things they cannot control. They stress about what people think. They worry about outcomes they cannot predict. They replay the past. They panic about the future. But the Stoics believed this was the fastest way to destroy your peace. Imagine a sailor screaming at the ocean because the waves are rough. It would be ridiculous. The sailor cannot control the ocean, but he can control how he sails the ship. Your life works the same way. You cannot control the storms, but you can control the captain. And that captain is your mind. the moment you stop trying to control the uncontrollable. Your fear disappears, because fear lives in the illusion of control. Once that illusion is gone, you become calm, powerful, and free. Other people's opinions are not your prison. One of the biggest fears people have today is not poverty. It is not pain. It is not even failure. It is judgment, the fear of being criticized, the fear of being laughed at, the fear of being misunderstood. This fear silently controls millions of lives. People stay in jobs they hate because they are afraid of what their family will say. People avoid starting businesses because they are afraid of looking foolish. People hide the true personality because they are afraid of rejection. But the Stoics saw something clearly that most people never realize. Other people's opinions are completely outside your control. The Stoic philosopher Epictetus explained it perfectly. He said, "If someone speaks badly of you, do not defend yourself. Instead say, he must not know the rest of my faults." At first this sounds strange. Why wouldn't you defend yourself? Because the Stoics understood something powerful. Trying to control what people think about you is like trying to control the weather. It is impossible. No matter what you do, someone will criticize you. If you succeed, people will say you got lucky. If you fail, people will say they saw it coming. If you stay quiet, they say you're weak. If you speak confidently, they say you're arrogant. You cannot win this game. And the moment you stop playing it, you become free. Even the Roman Emperor Marcus Aurelius faced constant criticism. Imagine ruling the largest empire in the world. Every decision you make affects millions of people. No matter what you choose, someone will hate it, yet Marcus Aurelius wrote in his journal something remarkable. He reminded himself every morning that he would meet selfish people, arrogant people, ungrateful people, deceitful people, but he refused to let them disturb his mind. Because he understood something deeply. People act according to their nature, their experiences, and their ignorance. Their behavior is a reflection of them, not you. Once you accept this, criticism stops hurting. And suddenly you can speak boldly, act boldly, live boldly. Because you are no longer living for approval, you are living for truth. And that is where fearlessness begins. Pain is not your enemy. Most people spend their entire lives trying to avoid discomfort. They avoid difficult conversations. They avoid challenges. They avoid risks. They avoid anything that might make them feel uncomfortable. But the Stoics believed that avoiding discomfort is the fastest way to become weak. Because discomfort is where strength is built. The philosopher Seneca once wrote something powerful. He said, "Difficulties strengthen the mind, as labor strengthens the body." Think about the strongest people you know. They're rarely the people who lived easy lives. They're usually the people who faced hardship, loss, failure, struggle. Pain forced them to grow. Pain forced them to become stronger. The Stoics understood that suffering is not always an obstacle. Sometimes it is a teacher. In fact, the Stoics practiced something unusual. They intentionally exposed themselves to small discomforts. They would sleep on hard beds, wear simple clothes, eat basic food. Why? To remind themselves that comfort is not necessary for happiness. And when you no longer depend on comfort, you become incredibly powerful. Imagine someone who is not afraid of discomfort. They can start a business even if it fails. They can speak confidently even if people laugh. They can chase big dreams even if the journey becomes difficult. Why? Because discomfort no longer scares them. Fear disappears when pain stops controlling your decisions. Most people run away from struggle. Stoics run toward growth. And that difference changes everything. Remember that you will die. One of the most powerful ideas in Stoicism is a phrase known as memento mori. It is a Latin phrase that means, remember that you will die. At first, this idea might sound dark or uncomfortable, but the Stoics believed that remembering death is not depressing. It is liberating. Most people live as if they will live forever. They postpone the dreams. They delay important decisions. They tolerate toxic relationships. They remain in careers that make them miserable. And they constantly tell themselves the same lie. I will do it later. Later, I will start the business. Later, I will travel. Later, I will chase my dreams. Later, I will live the life I truly want. But the Stoics believed that later is never guaranteed. The Roman emperor and philosopher Marcus Aurelius constantly reminded himself of this truth. He wrote in his personal journal, "You could leave life right now, let that determine what you do and say and think." Think about that for a moment. If you truly understood that your time on earth is limited, how differently would you live? Would you still worry so much about what people think? Would you still be afraid of embarrassment? Would you still delay your dreams? Probably not, because death has a strange power. It reveals what actually matters. When you accept the reality of death, something incredible happens. Fear begins to lose its power over you. Because suddenly you realize that the biggest tragedy in life is not dying. The biggest tragedy is never truly living. The Stoics believed that people should treat every day as if it might be their last. Not with panic, not with fear, but with urgency and purpose. Imagine waking up every morning with this mindset. Today matters. Today is not guaranteed. Today is precious. Suddenly you stop wasting time on meaningless things. You stop arguing about petty issues. You stop worrying about small opinions. You start focusing on what truly matters. Living with courage, speaking truthfully, pursuing meaningful goals, and appreciating the present moment. Death is not meant to scare you. It is meant to wake you up. And once you truly accept that life is temporary, fear begins to fade. Because you realize something powerful. You were never meant to live cautiously. You were meant to live fully. Your mind creates most of your suffering. Many of the problems people fear never actually happen, but their minds convince them they will. They imagine failure. They imagine rejection. They imagine humiliation. They imagine disaster. And they suffer emotionally, even though nothing has happened yet. The Stoic philosopher Seneca observed this behavior thousands of years ago. He said something incredibly insightful. We suffer more in imagination than in reality. Think about how true this is. Someone might lie awake at night worrying about a future problem. A job interview, a difficult conversation, a possible rejection. Their heart races. Their mind fills with anxiety. They feel fear as if the event is already happening. But the truth is, it hasn't happened. Their mind created the suffering. The Stoics believed that most emotional pain comes not from events themselves, but from our interpretation of them. For example, imagine two people losing the job. One person sees it as a disaster. They panic. They feel hopeless. They believe their life is ruined. But the other person sees it differently. They see it as an opportunity, a chance to change direction, a chance to build something new. The event is the same, but the interpretation changes everything. The Stoics believed that the mind is like a lens. It can magnify fear, or it can shrink it. When you learn to observe your thoughts instead of blindly believing them, something powerful happens. You create space between yourself and your fears. You start asking questions like, is this fear real? Is this problem happening right now? Or is my mind imagining it? And often the answer is surprising. Most fears exist only in the imagination. Once you understand this, your mind becomes calmer, more rational, more disciplined. And fear slowly begins to lose its grip, because the moment you stop believing every anxious thought, you begin to reclaim control of your mind. And when you control your mind, you control your life. Silence is a form of power. In today's world, everyone feels the need to speak. Everyone wants to explain themselves, defend themselves, prove themselves. But the Stoics believed something very different. Sometimes the strongest response is no response at all. The Stoic teacher Epictetus advised his students to practice restraint in speech. He taught that the more control you have over your words, the more control you have over your life. Think about how many conflicts begin with words spoken in anger. A careless comment, an emotional reaction, a defensive argument. But silence breaks this cycle. Silence forces you to pause, to think, to observe, and observation is one of the most powerful skills a person can develop. Even the Roman Emperor Marcus Aurelius practiced this discipline. Despite ruling an empire filled with political drama, criticism, and conflict, he constantly reminded himself to remain calm and measured in speech. Because the Stoics understood something important. The person who reacts emotionally is controlled by the situation, but the person who remains calm and silent is in control of themselves. Imagine someone insulting you. Most people immediately react. They argue. They defend themselves. They try to win the argument. But the Stoic response is different. Instead of reacting emotionally, you observe. You stay calm. You speak only if it is necessary. And often, silence speaks louder than words. Silence communicates confidence. It communicates control. And it communicates strength. Fearful people react quickly. Fearless people respond carefully. Master your words, and you master your power. Focus only on what truly matters. One of the biggest reasons people feel overwhelmed today is because their attention is constantly divided. Endless distractions. Social media, arguments, comparison, worry about things that have no real importance. The Stoics believed that a meaningful life requires clarity of focus. The philosopher Seneca warned about something that still applies today. He said that people are not short of time. They're simply wasting it. Think about how much energy people spend worrying about small issues. Arguments online, temporary problems, the opinions of strangers. But none of these things will matter in the long run. The Stoics believed that the key to a powerful life is deciding what truly matters. And ignoring everything else. Your character, your integrity, your discipline, your purpose. These are the things that shape your life. Everything else is noise. And when you eliminate unnecessary distractions, something amazing happens. Your mind becomes calm. Your decisions become clearer. Your confidence grows stronger. Fear thrives in confusion, but when your focus is sharp, your direction becomes clear. And a clear mind is a fearless mind. Become mentally unbreakable. At the heart of Stoicism is one ultimate goal. To build a mind that cannot be easily shaken by external events. Life will always bring challenges. Loss, failure, criticism, unexpected change. These things are unavoidable. But the Stoics believed that while you cannot control what happens to you, you can control how you respond. The philosopher Epictetus once said something powerful. It is not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. Two people can face the same hardship. One collapses under the pressure. The other grows stronger because of it. What makes the difference? Their mindset. Stoics train their minds to remain steady no matter what happens. They treat obstacles as opportunities. They treat challenges as training. They treat failure as feedback. And over time, This mindset creates something rare. Mental resilience. A person who cannot be easily discouraged. A person who does not panic under pressure. A person who remains calm while others lose control. This is what it means to be mentally unbreakable. And once you develop this strength, fear begins to lose its influence over your life. Because you know something most people don't. No matter what happens, you will adapt, you will endure, and you will rise again. Fear has controlled humanity for thousands of years. Fear of judgment, fear of failure, fear of uncertainty. But the Stoics discovered something powerful. Fear is not an enemy you must destroy. It is a signal, a test, an opportunity to strengthen your character. Every challenge you face is training your mind. Every obstacle is teaching resilience. Every moment of discomfort is an opportunity to grow stronger. The Stoic path is not about avoiding hardship. It is about becoming strong enough to face it calmly. When you stop fearing loss, you become bold. When you stop fearing opinions, you become free. When you stop fearing discomfort, you become powerful. And when you master your mind, you become unstoppable. So remember this: the world may be chaotic. People may be unpredictable. Life may be uncertain. But your mind, your thoughts, your response, these will always remain in your control. And that is where true fearlessness begins.